Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Crafting Conversations. Today we have the director, executive producer, casting director, and also the leading role of BugPunch himself, Mr. AFreakinTurkey. Welcome on in. Welcome on in.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
of course. I'm happy you decided to come out for this and for the first episode of this amazing podcast. Happy to have you, of course.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I had the time for it. So thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
So obviously, I've seen BugPunch. BugPunch is a Minecraft musical that is inspired and kind of a parody off of the stage musical from real life called Beetlejuice. It's a really good musical. You should go watch it.
Mhm.
I'll have a link to the VOD in the description. And eventually, when the actual recording comes out and the post shot comes out, I will link that in the description as well. But it's a really cool musical. I've seen it twice. It's a masterpiece. I love it. But I'm happy to talk with Turkey about it today. So my first kind of question for you is, what kind of inspired you to want to make a parody or kind of adaptation of Beetlejuice into a Minecraft musical? Like, there's a ton of musicals out there.
Mhm.
What kind of made you want to pick this one specifically?
That's a great question. I think what it really, I've talked about this with my team extensively to this point, just because I wanted them to know where my headspace is at, or like where my heart is at with the project. A big starting part of it is the fact that um I'm not sure if you know about this, but basically, while Hamilton, for example, got a pro shot, right, that you
Yeah.
can watch, I'm pretty sure Disney Plus, you're able to watch it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Beetlejuice was did have a plan to get a pro shot even back when it was on Broadway in the Winter Garden Theater. It was supposed to get his pro shot in March or April of 2020, which was unfortunately right when COVID hit, and because of that, the pro shot was never done. There are professional level recordings of certain performances or certain acts or scenes from the show, but there's not one full unedited. I mean, like not unedited, but pure pro shot of the entire production. Um, and that's something that's always stuck with me for like the longest time, just because I've talked to people here and there throughout the years, being like, "Oh, my favorite show is Beatles." Growing up in New York City myself, always ask like, "Oh, what's your favorite show?" Sometimes I'm like, "Oh, Beetlejuice." They're like, "Oh, I never got to see it." While it's still touring, it's not available in the way that it was originally on the Broadway, platform, right? Um, the actual touring show that is out there right now is incredible. Don't get me wrong. I'm in fact going to be watching it myself very soon, and I'm very excited for that. Um, and I still think that there is a magic with preserving the original cast in a way, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
preserving
Sure.
that original energy that was there when it was like initialized, right? When it was like created, when it was like formed into the art that it is. Um, Created by some incredible people like Anthony King, Scott Brown, who made the book, and then Eddie Perfect, who wrote the original composition of the music. Um, I think beyond the point of just immortalizing the energy of the original Broadway performance, it also comes from a place of me wanting to um share the magic of Beetlejuice as a show with as many people as possible. Just because I also know it's one of the lesser known musicals out there, even though it was so it had such notoriety when it was on Broadway, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't tend to hear about it very much, like outside of the scope of Broadway, or people that do know about Broadway theater, right?
Yeah, I've
Most
I've
just
never
know
actually
like the
even
Mike.
seen it.
Yeah, right. Like
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good example. Where like even people that I had brought on to the production, some of them hadn't even watched the movie, let alone heard of the musical, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I don't want to necessarily say it's niche because it is out there. People do know about it, but it's niche in the sense of that like it's not mainstream. Not everybody knows about it.
Yeah,
Um,
Sure.
There's like a certain like tier. It's like on a certain level of the iceberg that I would not. I don't think it's fair for it to be on. So I'm like, let's give it some love. And it's also on top of that, it is my favorite show of all time on Broadway. It's I said this in the playwright note that I had in the playbill for BugPunch. It's out there. It's on the Twitter and stuff like that. But um, I had said on it that it was the first show that I watched on Broadway that like changed how I viewed theater as a whole and like just the performing arts in general. Um, the type of stuff that even Alex Brightman was able to do on that stage, like Sophia and Caruso. You had Carrie Butler, right?
Yeah.
Rob over here, Leslie, who we named the dog after in our show. Much love, Leslie.
Much love.
But we took very heavy inspiration from them just because of, at least for me, their acting and their performance on there, and just the work of everybody with that performance in that show in general, inspired me. And I'm like, if I'm gonna make a Minecraft musical, it's got to be
Um, yeah, from going off of that though, casting opened back in March, which was over around like 7, 8 months ago. I don't know how long March ago was, but it
April,
was a
May,
while
June,
ago.
July. I can't do
Mm,
math, like 5 or something like
5 at
that.
least. But I
Yeah.
was interested. I scrolled back all the way in your Twitter. I know everything, by the way.
hmm
So it's
Okay, you did your
interesting.
research. Okay.
I was interested on how is like the overall casting process of finding people. Were there like certain roles that were kind of hard to cast, or some roles that were like, oh yeah, this is the person that has to play this. I'm just interested how the casting process was with that.
Yeah. Do you mean like the people that we ended up selecting, or just in general the process itself?
Yeah, either like people you selected or people who you thought about selecting, just anything with the casting kind of there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was definitely a really fun. It was probably the most fun I've had in the entire production. Just because beforehand we were, excuse me, I was burping. Beforehand we were figuring out how exactly we wanted to bring the show to life, right? Or how to bring it, to life in our own way, right? With our own little twist. That was like, the pre-production phase, whereas like just hours and hours of script writing. Um, but then we had finally gotten to this phase where now we're actually bringing in the cast itself to, do the show justice, right? Um, it was both the most stressful, but also the one of the most stressful, but also definitely the most fun I had in the production, in the sense of that, like, um, I had a lot. It was like kind of seeing as like the world is our playground, and when I was looking at the people that auditioned, there were so many unbelievably talented people that auditioned. Obviously, I can't name people that weren't selected, right? Or even nominees, just because that wouldn't be. I don't
Right,
think they
right.
want me to put their names out
Yeah, I
there,
see.
but
Yeah,
but I will definitely say, like, there were some very, like, very very talented people that were I even had to say no to, right?
yeah, sure.
Um, it was a very competitive process just because of the fact that there was a very particular angle that I wanted to preserve for the show with each and every one of its characters, right?
Yeah,
That I made a big executive decision for myself, at least. That it wasn't just me making these decisions, by the way. It was, just for preface. It was also there were 2 to 3 other casting directors that were working alongside me, um, like figuring this out, right?
yeah,
Um, but back to what I was saying, that there was a very specific angle that I was looking with each and every one of the characters, so that the overarching plot still made like sense in an emotional sense, right? Because I don't know if you have a question for this later on, so I won't comment it out right now. But we made a lot of changes, right? In the
yeah,
sense of like the plot, but not in the energy. I'm sure you also noticed this when you were
yeah,
watching, right? It's still the same show, but the way in which the point A to point B is the same, but the journey in which you take to get there was made different.
Yeah, sure.
So, we wanted to make sure that we got people that were able to still take the original energy of the characters, but to repurpose it into their own interpretation of it, right? Um, which is why, for a transformative parody, we need people that are able to be transformative parodies. So, um, we had like a great example is like, Lexi over here, Lexi Lee, my wonderful co-star. Um, she came in. Um, I won't get. I don't want to embarrass her too much, so I'll keep it very very brief. But she came in with her video audition, and I listened to it, and immediately I was hooked. Right, like I was immediately hooked when I heard, because she not only had the essence of Lydia like really nailed down, but it was also a thing of um I could tell that she was adaptable, right? Which is such an important thing for just theater in general. And so we brought her in alongside the different um a ton of other people that were brought in for the live audition segment of the audition process, and we were able to listen to her and watch her perform, and also hear her takes on the lines that we had. And um just to give you an idea of how close knit she was to the role without knowing what the show was, right? Because we used anonymous names, anonymous roles, right? Um, she performed in her audition "Dead Mom," the very song which she would be singing in the
That's
show.
great.
So that's one of my favorite moments in production, that I just find so funny. But like in that moment when she performed it on that stage, and I even had her perform it a second time because I wanted to hear it again. Like I was hooked. I was hooked. I'm like, this is our Lydia, right?
Yeah.
Um, there were a lot of moments like that with a lot of the cast, like Shadow, for example, right? Shadow with George, right? I was like, boom, that's our George. With actually, Honeydew didn't even come in originally, mainly for Delilah. But we were like, hey, could you give this role a shot, right? Give these lines a chance, like give it a try. And again, it was another thing where it's like, bang, we have our Delilah, right? It's like, it was such a fun experience watching like the puzzle pieces fall into place with these incredibly talented performers, right? Um, but again, some of them not doing Minecraft before it, but this is their first time ever. Some of them ever doing a Minecraft production, especially to this scale, right? But it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
so fun to watch them like um fall into place in the sense of like discovering their character and how they wanted to portray it, while still keeping to the original, doing justice to the original material. Um, I hope that answers the question. It's been
Yeah.
very fun on my end.
Yeah, but
Um,
on that
to
same
watch that
vein, I was
happen.
wondering,
Yeah,
was there any, like, roles or, like, people that were kind of hard to find or hard to fill? Or
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, just
Um,
interested.
no, that's a good question. On it, I would say if I had to pick one, if I had to pick like one role, or I'll pick probably to make it easier on myself. I'm gonna pick one female role, one male role. Probably the hardest male role would have to go to Andy Maitland. Um, just because Andy is such a particular character.
Yeah.
Where like obviously we got really lucky with finding Shadow to do George, but Andy is like, Adam in the original. He's a very satirical character in nature, right?
Yeah, sure.
Where like his very existence is satire, right? So we had to find someone that would be able to portray that energy, right? But also make it feel natural. Like that's just the way he is, rather than like, oh, I'm a character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Um, so I would say Andy would probably be the one that we found the biggest challenge with. Meanwhile, with female roles, There were actually so many incredibly talented people with most of the female roles, I'll be honest with you. But probably the one that we had the biggest challenge with, just because of how nitpicky I was with it, would probably have to go to Miss Venezuela,
Yeah.
aka Miss Argentina, just because we were taking the role in a different direction than the original show had, and I wanted to make sure that it met that vision, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Um, so it was very important to me that we found someone that was able to embrace that energy. Um, and I'm really happy with where we landed with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And on the topic of casting, just a little one more kind of casting type of question. You are
Mhm.
obviously playing the arguably main character. This show's kind of structured in an
Yeah.
interesting way, where there's kind of like
Mhm.
multiple characters who kind of had the pretty much exact same time of screen time, honestly.
Yeah.
But you're playing one of the main characters. So was that always something that you had envisioned yourself playing from the beginning? Because I have a tweet from you here from January 14th, obviously, and then
Mhm.
you're deciding to make the musical in March. So I assume that suggests that you wanted to play Beetlejuice or Bug Punch well before the casting opened. So I'm interested
Somebody did
on
their
how that
research.
went. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're very right in that. And also on that note, before I forget, and I think I'm already starting to forget. There was something I wanted to say regarding that with the roles. Um, I'm sorry. What did you say before you were asking the question specifically about? Oh, yes. You were bringing up the fact that it's a unique show in the sense that like everyone has their own like little like star moment, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That is also another reason why I think Bug Punch is so special, and Beetlejuice in like, as the inspiration is because and this was another thing that we had to talk about in the process, and I'm sure we'll go into it further into this. But it's really cool because Beetlejuice, the plot, has very significant character arcs for pretty much all of the main cast, which is really fun to watch because it's like they all have that big like hero's journey moment, right? That you would see in a book, right? For just one character sometimes, right? What's so cool about Beetlejuice and Bug Punch, um, is that you have that like big turning moment for pretty much every character, which is so fun to watch. It was really fun to like write about and put into the show. Um, but in any case, to answer your original question, sorry on that. Um, with Beetlejuice as a character, pretty much ever since I watched Alex Brightman. I was actually lucky enough to meet Alex Brightman at a convention a couple years ago. But I have always like dreamed that if I was ever going to be on Broadway or on a theater production, my dream role would be Beetlejuice, all things considered. Um, but I had already before Bug Punch was even initiated as an idea, which was late December, very late December, like after Christmas. Um, I had always tried to do the Beetlejuice voice and failed horribly. Those clips they've never been recorded. Those attempts were never recorded on purpose because they were horrible. But I had such an admiration for the energy that Alex brought on that stage, or not just Alex. You had also like Justin Collette, for example. Um, just watching them at work was always so fun to see, and I'm like, God, I wish I could do that. Um, and so then I ended up, Hamilton ended up happening. Spood's parody of Hamilton,
Yeah, of course.
and I jokingly sent him a message. I was like, "Hey, Beetlejuice next?" And understandably, he was like, "No." So, I was like, "Wait a minute, I could do this myself." And from that point, pretty much, literally from like January 1st to like 4 months later, I was just practicing the voice, practicing the voice, practicing the voice because I knew I really, really wanted to bring that character to life.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's where it all started from.
That's great to hear. Because honestly, I today was the first time I've heard a clip of your recording, like, your actual voice. I
Mhm.
heard it a little bit before, we got in call, but honestly, your voice sounds so different from your Beetlejuice voice. Just for listeners, could we get a quick change into the Beetlejuice voice and just have you do, like, a line?
Sure, I could
Like
do a little bit of a line. Do you wanna know how I do it, or you just wanted to hear
yeah,
it?
I'm interested. What is the process? How do
Okay,
you get
sure.
into character? Yeah, go ahead.
So there's a lot of steps to it, but the biggest first thing is that obviously every Beetlejuice has done it differently. Just because the way that Alex Brightman has done it is actually a very intricate technique. That one that I myself can't fully do, right? Or at least without break. Um, which is why I'm also fortunate that I was able to do it, in the form of Minecraft, because I could actually like drink water between takes and stuff like that and take breaks. But obviously, with enough training, I could get to a point where I could do it for a long period of time, and I even already have gotten a lot more used to it than I used to when I first started doing it, like 4 months into the production. But the way that I'll talk about Alex Brightman's technique, mainly just because that's the main inspiration I took from for the voice. But Justin Collette also does an incredible version of the voice, just for reference. Shout out Justin Collette. Um, but the way that Alex does it is that he unlocks a part of his voice called the false chords, which are basically, if you've heard like metal singers, for example, they go like, "Ooh, ah," right? You have that like, "Ooh," right? That very like down below part of your vocal cords, right? That's called the false chords, which is a part that doesn't tend to be activated, at least without like mindfully doing it yourself, right? The best way to bring yourself down into that false chord is to actually cough. So if you're going right, then you're gonna activate right that little like gruff feeling you feel when you're at the bottom of your like when you're coughing chord. So this right here is my false chord, right? And I still sound like myself, right? Because I haven't added anything yet. But then once you bring it there, then we're going to add a technique that is unique to Alex, which is called ventricular fold phonation, which is a very fancy way of saying that basically he just is able, this is a genetic thing that he has, where basically he's able to rattle his false vocal cord as just like breathing. Just like if you're going like, he's able to just rattle air through the false vocal cord and make that weird gruffy sound. It's all a trick, right? Meanwhile, for me, I only have a part of that. I'm not able to do it as naturally as he's able to do it. I'm still able to do the technique. I'm just not able to do it as carefree as he is. It's not a I don't have the genetic ability to do it without any trouble. But basically, once we bring it down here, then we bring a little gruff, then you breathe into it, right? And then you bring it a little higher. And once you bring it higher into your head voice, right? Then you have the voice. And that's how you get Beetlejuice, eh? And then I would say something like, "It's showtime."
Oh, that is exceptional.
Thank you.
But I think that's gonna shock a lot of people of how you can just so naturally just do it. I mean, there's
Took a
not
lot of
any
practice.
yeah, a ton of practice. Hard work pays off, guys.
For
Mhm.
sure, for sure.
For
But
sure, for sure.
above all else, make sure don't push yourselves too hard. I did this
Yeah.
with a lot of breaks in between. Be careful out there.
Yeah, for sure. So, on that same vein, I mean, you're also the director of the show, you're the executive producer
Mhm.
and a casting director. How is balancing all of those hats while also playing the main role? How was that for, like, you mentally and just overall handling all of those different tasks and stuff?
That's such a great question. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say, "Oh, it was a walk in the park," right? Obviously, you give yourself a lot of hats. You got to learn how to juggle those hats, right? Um, Definitely, there were roles that were easier to manage than others. Um, but honestly, I wouldn't even say like in general there were roles that were easier. I think it's just they all took turns in being easier or harder to manage, right? Up until the final, I would say the final month of production, which is really when every single role was needing like all of its attention, right? And so it was easier to manage at the beginning because I didn't have to worry to the character wasn't needed yet because I could just practice the character, but I was needed as the director slash producer, right? Because we were writing the script and we were figuring out what was legally allowed, like what we could do legally. Right? Also what was like financially feasible, resources wise. Then near the rehearsal stage, right? That's the point when I no longer need to be a playwright, but now I need to be a director as well as the main, like the lead role, right? Um on top of being the producer, so now that's 3 roles, right? Which was a little bit more on my plate, but still something manageable. And then as you came into the final, the final months of production, it was all hands on deck, right? At least in my wheelhouse. Um, there were moments when it was really stressful. There were moments, and I said this even in my closing speech on show day, that there were moments when um I had to ask myself, other people would have to ask themselves, is this still feasible? Is this something that we can, see to the end, right? Is this something that we have the not only the manpower but also the mental like capacity to handle, right? There's a lot of things that, on show day they may seem perfect. There's a lot of things that go behind the scenes that have to be figured out in order to make it possible, right? Things that the audience would never see in a million years, right? We're talking legal trouble, we're talking, copyright, we're talking the making sure that everything is greenlit through the sense of making sure that we are good to push forward with raising awareness for the Broadway League and the Broadway League Foundation in nature, right? Though, and figuring out the music, figuring out how to move around, making a parodied version without um, getting into legal trouble with the original composer, right? Stuff like that. That's just some of the stuff I would have to figure out on top of like like leading rehearsals and making sure that the blocking meets the original energy right there. But thankfully, and this is the part that would make it much, much easier for me to bear, is that I wasn't alone in this process, right? There were a lot of incredibly talented people that are working alongside me. You had folks like Saren, who was the lead choreographer. You had Nash, who was our music composer, right? Who like the musical director is the proper term, but like he killed it on the music. Um, you had, I mean, Lori, my co-playwright that was there every night that I was working on that script. Lori was right there beside me working on it too, you know. Those are just a few examples of just how it takes a village, right? So I think the first thing was being prepared to ask for help. That was definitely the first thing that made it manageable. Is that going into a project like this, it may be natural to feel like, oh yeah, I can, handle these big parts and then everyone else will handle the rest. It really doesn't work that way in reality, in the sense of like that the big things even become the responsibility of the smaller people, right? That like everyone gives a hand in the way that they can. And that's the way that the show gets to the finish line, you know? Hopefully that makes some sort of sense where I was going with that.
Yeah, for sure. And you were talking a lot about that in how the legal trouble and all of the script writing changes, 'cause there's a lot of changes to the script, so I'd love you to kind of delve into that, especially here's the main thing that we probably need to start with. What is, like,
Mhm.
the main copyright under this musical of things like, "Oh, yeah, this can't be in the musical," or, like, "This name can't be in" what are the main copyright laws for
Yeah.
that kind of stuff?
Great question. So for something to be a transformative parody, it has to fall under fair use, right? And for something to be fair use, there's a lot of different legal jargon for it, right? But depending on the person that you talk, it's not an exact science because honestly, it really depends on if the original creator wants to, like push or even the studio that's the producer of it wants to push for copyright, right? Or for like a cease and desist, for example. Um, it really boils down to just is it is it unique, right? If you're trying to use for fair use the original material, you can only use 5 seconds of the material, right? Um, but if you want to use more of the material, then you have to make it unique. You have to bring something new to it that wasn't there original, right? Which is why we couldn't do a copy paste of the original show, right? And on top of that, it just didn't feel right to me, like morals wise, to do that because I felt like it would be a little bit of a spit in the face to the actual show itself that's still on tour that you can go see yourself, right? Which I highly recommend anyone watching this to go do yourself because it's an incredible show. Um, but I wanted to also give it its own identity, right? While keeping the original energy. So with that being said, the biggest thing that had to change was mainly song names. The biggest thing was song names and character names. Because if you're going to keep a Beetlejuice in itself, Beetlejuice the name is copywritten, right? Because that's not only under the musical, but that's also under the original movie, right? So we could not use that, right? Um, but other examples is like you could probably notice that we use the original name Lydia just like it is in the show and the movie. The reason we use that is because we changed the last name, which is an aspect of the name being changed, right? So instead of Lydia Beat, it's Lydia Beats, right? Charles Dietz is now George Beats. Um, Delia is now Delilah, and so on and so forth. Um, and so that's one aspect of it. Another big part is with the music. Honest, like the biggest thing is the music, in the sense of that, like, in order to be parodied, we had to change major parts of the verses, major parts of the lines. In order, it can still have the same meaning or emotion behind it, or the same like path behind it, in the sense of like, for example, "Alone" in the second act is pretty much the same song, but it's following the plot of our show rather than the original show's dead mother, right? That's another thing. Like we can't have since we have to change the names. Um, Dead Mom couldn't exist as a song. It could not exist. The name could not be as it is. And so we had to change it to something else. And we're like, what do we change it to? Because if it's not Dead Mom, then what's the song about? And if the song's about something else, does that change the show? Right. And so that was an entire re-engineering, a backwards engine. Like we had to work backwards basically from there, where we changed it to a dead dog. And then we were like, okay, what does the dog have to do with the show? The dog is the last semblance of the family being together. What happened to the mother? The mother left, and then so on and so forth, right? That's how we were able to kind of like work backwards in order to create that transformative parody, right? That was under fair use. As for pretty much everything else, though, yeah, honestly, it came just to us wanting to also just give our own like creative freedom on it, right? Have our own creative freedom on it and add our own jokes. Like the gay Republican joke is not mine. I can't take credit for it, unfortunately. That is the
That's
original show.
exceptional.
Yeah, but something that's ours, for example, is like a joke that I really what's a really good joke that I like? Um, a joke oh, no, a joke that I really like is the one Minecraft one that we make that Delilah says is, "As my guru Lesotho always says, sadness is like a wooden pickaxe, no one needs it, throw it out." I'm a big fan of that line. That one's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
I had a few personal
Yeah.
favorites. My one of my personal favorites was at the start
Uh-huh.
with the whole broken bed thing. That
Mhm.
is so smart, and then the whole
Yeah.
broken bed leading
Yeah.
to, like, the death of, the 2 people who live like, which living
Yeah.
in the house. When
Mhm.
I saw that, I was like, "Wow, that's really smart writing." And the pop cultural references
Yeah.
throughout, like, the "dig it ish" is so funny, at when, Beetlejuice is up the roof,
Yep.
that is so
Yep.
good. And then really, like, just all the pop culture stuff, like, the Spotify
Right.
Premium joke got me laughing.
Yeah.
Stuff like that
Pumpkin
is
spice season,
so
god.
funny. And then the
Yeah.
dead dog, I laughed at it at first, but once you get
Mhm.
into, like, the how it fits into the musical, like, overall
Right.
and overall, like, the story, it's just so good writing. Your team and all the people working on that script did an exceptional job with that.
Thank you. On behalf of us, thank you. We
Yes,
appreciate
of
that.
course. Moving on to a little bit more of the rehearsal side of, like, just rehearsing and doing all that. How many times
Mhm.
a week, like, were you guys rehearsing inside of Minecraft and stuff? How many times, like, per week were you guys doing these? Just
Oh,
interested.
easily like 3 or 4 times
Wow.
a week. It was extensive. I can actually here, let me get our first because I have it in my Google Calendar.
Yeah.
I'll humor you and check the exact, like, starting day we had. It was all the way back in we started after the end of March. And so the orientation was on the 3rd of March. No, 3rd of April. 3rd of April. And then the very first rehearsal was on April 10th. And after that, we had 3 to 4 rehearsals a week.
Hmm.
Um, Most of them extending to 3 hours. But then after a certain week, I can't tell you the exact date without looking at my calendar, but then it got extended to 3 to 4 sessions, each 4 hours long.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and then Tech Week, which is the leading up into
Yeah, of
show
course.
day, with our dress rehearsals and so on. We had like literally pretty much every day of one week
Wow.
was either like a tech rehearsal day, a dress rehearsal day, or a rest day.
Yeah,
So, um,
I was interested, how long did it take, like, of rehearsals for you guys to finish, like, the first act? Was that how it's structured, like, you were going song by song, or it's kinda, like,
yeah,
sporadic? I was interested,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, good question. So we took it on like that. We would go song by song and scene by scene until we prioritized the choreography and the songs because those were the most like cohesive parts and the thing that people would be paying most attention to, right? Naturally. Um, And so we made sure that we had a strong basis on that before we moved on to blocking. But yeah, we did it. We took things act by act. So we basically we practiced each scene, and then like halfway through practicing Act One, we did a full run through of the first half, and then we did the same thing with the second half of Act One. And then once we had everything, we did a final review, and then we did a full run through of Act One. Once we had that, we did feedback. We told each other what we had to that, like, for example, I myself and Saren being the choreography lead, we had a lot of feedback. We gave them that feedback, and then we'd move on to Act Two. We did a dry read of each act before we moved on to do them. So Act One was dry read before we started like practicing it, and then Act Two was dry read before we did Act Two.
Yeah, for sure, it's really interesting because like, that's heavy dedication to stuff, like, doing all
Definitely,
that, it's pretty insane.
yeah.
Is there any moments I know you were talking about earlier, like, Lydia came in singing Dead Mom for her, like, audition song. Is there any moments from rehearsals kinda like that, that just, like, stand out to you as good moments that you could share, maybe?
Oh, easily. There's so many. Um, I will. I would be here for hours if I gave you all of them, but I can tell you one that we still quote to this day, um, which is that one of the rehearsals. I forget the context of it, but someone had said something like, you know how you say like that's fire, or that's bars, right? As if someone said like something really cool. Um, basically, someone had said something really cool, and I was in creative, and so I just randomly got a tough block, and I placed it down, and I went, "Dang, that's tough." And so every time somebody had to like practice a line, or like, we did a run through of something after the line read or after the performance, like at least like 5 or 6 people would go, "That's tough. Dang, that's tough," and they would put like, the block, or they would say it in chat. That was a really funny moment that we had, or like a funny inside joke that we had. Um, there was so many. Um, there was there we had a whole we were jokingly saying we were gonna make an entire like iceberg with all the jokes. Um, I'm trying to think of another one that I could tell. I'm trying to think if there was another thing that I could tell. We had joking. I don't know if I had already said this before before you left. But we had jokingly said we were gonna make an entire like iceberg with all of the inside jokes and all of the things that happened in the production, like especially during rehearsals. But one other really funny thing. Oh, it's such a funny thing, and I would hate myself if I don't mention it, but it's really weird, but we find it funny. Um, basically, there is this when we were making the song, girl, like the parody of Girl Scout from the original show.
Yeah.
That's when Madsby sings. Before that, Wonderful Noise. Um, in our show, it's called "Girl with Bronchopulmonary Aspergillosis." Um, and so we needed to figure out how to pronounce that. So we scoured the internet, right? The internet's a beautiful thing. That's also how fun fact. There's a little tidbit for those that are curious. In the lyrics um of Honeydew's Pumpkin Spice Season, when she is just spouting random nonsense like coffee, the most important meal of the day. Those are all Minion memes. Every single one of them, single one of those quotes is a Minion meme that we
That's
actively
great.
found on Google or Facebook. So they exist. They're out there. Even now's the time to buy a cat, which is so funny because that's in the original lyrics as well. Um, so the fact that we were able to find that makes it all the more magical. But anyway, I digress. Um, we had found this one YouTube channel by the name of Julian McKell. And we, especially Lori and I, fell in love with Julian. Not necessarily because of, because he did have a non-American accent, right? Because he wasn't, at least to my knowledge, he isn't native to America, right? So I'm pretty sure he's French. He's a French. He's French, and he has a winery or something like that. That's to my knowledge. They take it with a grain of salt. I don't remember fully, right? But in any case, he has an accent um, to his English, right? And I just fell so in love with the way that he would pronounce certain words, especially since he had an entire channel like that was like established and primarily was used to help people pronounce words in English, right? And so and at the beginning of every video it'd be like, "Hello, this is your word for today," right? And then he would go on like in a very like calm and relaxing and like welcoming voice, and then he would proceed to say like either a random word or a word that you just would not like were not mentally prepared to hear in a casual sense. right? Our version of that was the word pregnant. And so he was just over here, and Julian McKell would just be like, "This is your word for today. The word is pregnant." Like with the most like overly like pronounced T at the end, which just added to it for us. He just had pregnant, and we loved it so much. This is how much we loved, and again, this is how you know that we weren't like laughing at him. It was more just like this is such a funny thing that like we found this because we were trying to find how to pronounce bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. We we were this close to inviting him. We found his Instagram. We were this close to sending him an invite. But at the last second I'm like, "No. No. Let's not bother the man. He's enjoying his winery. Leave him be." But we were this close to inviting Julian McKell. And in fact, actually, we were so close. Like, just to give you an idea of how close we were pressing send on the
Wow.
message to him, but Instagram messages told us that the message we were sending had too many characters in it, and so that was like us. We were like, "That's the universe telling us to leave him alone," so we left him be.
Oh, that's
But
great.
I shout out to Julian McKell for basically every rehearsal after us writing Pumpkin Spice Season and me explaining the joke to the rest of the cast that at least one person would go pregnant. It was amazing.
Oh, that's great.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now we're gonna go into the actual performance now, which
Hmm.
I'm so bummed I couldn't make it. Honestly, I kind of wanted to be there. I actually didn't get the opportunity to watch it live or actually be in the
Hmm.
audience, but
No worries.
I wish I could have. Hey, if you ever
Yeah,
do
but
anything again,
yeah.
I'll be there. In
Sounds
like
good. Sounds
9
like a
months,
plan.
I'll be
Yeah. We'll see you guys. I
um
can't tell you guys when the next I can't tell you when the next one, if the next one's happening, but I can tell you that this is not the last one I want to do.
cool.
Um that's all I can say with that though.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But one of I just some of the cool things that I found that I'd really like you to dive into why you decided to do that. One of the things I
Sure.
noticed was the I saw this in chat actually. A lot of the things I found were just moderators in chat telling viewers like, "Oh yeah, this is happening live by the way." The cameras
Mhm.
that are moving around and for the Twitch stream are live cameras. There are people like flying around
Yes.
the set and
Mhm.
getting camera angles and stuff. So how does that work,
Yeah,
and, like, what made you want to do that?
great question. So this is something, and I'm sure we're gonna delve more into this like as we get into, the actual show. But with I said before that like I had a very specific vision with this, that I wanted to bring a certain angle to it. One certain angle especially is that while I genuinely believe that Shamilton was able to do this in their own like medium, right? With their like artistic process, with their own like art style, with like their theater, their theater production, as well as the performance itself. I wanted to, and this is not, I say this like very heavily. I did. There were moments where I was still reminded that it was like Minecraft, right? And that's not a fault of like Hamilton. That's a challenge of the limits of Minecraft as an engine, as a game itself, right? And so a challenge I wanted to um that I want a pillar that I wanted to have for this show is that um it felt like that you were watching like a theater production in real life, even if it is in Minecraft, that we could as close as possible bring the viewer to the world of Broadway, right? Like to the immersion of Broadway, not just as the show itself, but as a like to bring the viewer to feel like they are sitting in the theater on Broadway, right? And so what that means is that we need to bring things into Minecraft that that happen in real life in theater, right? What that means is stuff like, for example, the actual um, place, the stage, and the theater that it was all physically taking place in was a more or less one-to-one replica of the Winter Garden Theater itself, the very place in which Beetlejuice had its Broadway debut, right? That's one example. Another example is that all of our ensemble members may have different musical numbers that they show up in, and may have different characters that they play. However, the costumes that they wear, which were beautifully curated and made by our marketing team and our costume designers over there and our skin artists, they were able to maintain the primary identity of the ensemble members themselves so that you could still recognize them in their different costumes. Because realistically, in theater, it's not like they shapeshift, right? It's they're wearing different makeup, or they're wearing a different costume, or they're wearing a suit, right? But it's still a person. And so that's like two of just the few of the many things that we did in order to bring that like the magic of like you're watching a show on Broadway, right? But in the sense of the cameras is a great question. That the reason why we didn't just do one flat angle for the entire thing is because a pro shot has the opportunity to present things in an angle that you can't really see even in the theater itself, right? And so for people at home, we wanted it to be able to feel like that you are watching the show from the best angles, right? So for the people that are in the theater, you have the pleasure of being able to watch it as like raw and as like you know, as true to the theater experience as possible. Meanwhile, those that are watching via the stream would have the experience and the awesome experience to be able to watch a pro shot, like, you know, a pro shot level of like angles live, like to be able to be like, wow, I am watching an in the moment now, like it's happening now, pro shot in the making, which I thought is something that you really don't get the opportunity to experience. So I thought it would be really cool for people to be able to experience that.
Yeah, for sure. But what I feel like one of the things that really brought the effect of like, oh yeah, this is like an almost real Broadway show, except in Minecraft,
Yeah.
is the dialogue was, according to this, the dialogue was like actual real in between scenes. The
Oh,
actors were speaking on
yeah.
stage and stuff.
Yeah,
That's one
sorry.
of
I
the
didn't know you wanted
biggest
me to
things
go
that
into
brought it
that.
alive. Well, no, I actually was
Yeah.
asking about this now,
Yeah,
but
yeah. No worries.
I was the main thing I was interested with that because you've always kind of gotten to why you were interested in doing that. I was mainly interested for this. This is kind of a me question. I'm not gonna lie because
Yeah,
I don't
sure,
think
sure.
many people in the watching this will find it interesting. But are you using simple voice chat or are you doing something else? Because from my noticing, I've watched a few of the live streams of people who invited creators who invited, and above their heads, you don't see like the voice simple voice chat thing. So using simple voice chat to get it to the people in the theater, what were you using to get it to people inside of the theater?
Yeah, great question. It is actually still a simple voice
Wow,
chat. Just
interesting.
simply, let's just say we had some very talented wizards on our tech team, on our technical team, that were able to not only suit up stuff for the music, but also for the performers themselves, right?
Wow.
Sound effects were an entirely different system. Sound effects and songs were in their completely own system. That wasn't actually, believe it or not, that wasn't actually being played over someone's microphone, for example, or someone's soundboard. That in itself was actually its own jukebox system that had been custom made for the show. We had made by the wonderful Megan, who is our stage manager, the production stage manager for the show. She had made an entire cue list in order for each song and sound effect to be played at a specific time. And then we had our technical team managing those stingers and sound effects behind the scenes. and played at the time they were supposed to be played. Usually via a command or by a music disc that was custom, like was made with a custom with a resource pack that we had, and basically we changed the file to be a specific sound that we wanted played.
So
Hmm.
did for those in between scenes, did most of the actors have their lines memorized, or was it kind of a thing where they had it on screen for them maybe to view? How was that working with their lines?
That's another great question. So, you know, full transparency, obviously, it's a lot to learn, right? Especially an entire Broadway production, right? I will say we encourage people to be as off book as possible, right? There would be some times when we would, I can't tell you exact lines because it's very like case by case basis, right? But the priority we had for the show was to make sure that we were able to hit those cues, right? So if a cue line wasn't met, then that would mean that a cue wouldn't be played on time, right? Or wouldn't be played at all, which would affect the quality of the show, right? So in those cases, we did, you know, it was never like said, no, you can't look at your cue line, right? But for example, I myself, I can tell you, like, um, you know, if I had ever forgotten a cue line, I would be able to alt tab, quickly check the script in case of emergency, right? To make sure I had it in case, right? But, um, like things that I was ad libbing were ad libbed off the top of my head just because, you know, that was what I was doing as the performer, right? As well as extensively memorizing the script.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I didn't notice any
Um,
script breaks myself, so I mean, all
yeah.
the people did exceptional jobs with that 'cause I personally
Yeah.
didn't notice any mistakes really. I know there were because
Yeah.
all the people there probably were because all the people in their head are like, "Oh, I said a instead of like
Right.
or something," but
Right.
I didn't notice anything really.
Yeah.
So it was a really good job with
I'm
those
glad to hear it.
lines. I didn't
Yeah. Thank
because
you.
I didn't even notice for a while that when I was watching it my first time, I didn't notice like, "Oh yeah, these lines are being said in person." There's some until somebody in like chat said, "Oh yeah, these lines are in person." And then after that, I
Yep.
started to notice like, "Oh yeah, you can kind of tell like, oh yeah, like here they like maybe there's like a little gap or something." And I'm like, "Oh, these lines are like actual on the stage." And
Yep.
that's really impressive because they're moving around too by saying some of these
Mm-hmm.
lines, and it's really good. I was really impressed for that, and
Yeah.
I think you've set a format that other Minecraft musicals might start to adapt, and I really hope they do,
I
because
hope they
on-stage
do.
lines are so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I would that was also another like, you know, reason for us to do the things the way we did. It's like, you know, it's an experiment that thankfully went very well, right? But I also hoped for it to be a thing to like encourage people to, you know, get creative, you know, really push the boundaries of what we have in front of us.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
yeah.
Your show was very different from what Spoon's Hamilton was. Obviously, you were working in them at the same time to some
Right.
extent, but yours, I think, personally, is gonna be what a lot of the more technical shows end up being. Because obviously, there's a ton of technical elements in this, like, you're using custom models and stuff, which is something that
Right.
wasn't seen primarily in Spoon's Hamilton. It was completely vanilla, while yours takes a more modded approach, so we mod which ooh, takes a modded approach with a really interesting kind of take on it. So if that, I'm
Right.
wondering what was like the most technical or like hard thing to set up behind the scenes that was like, oh yeah, this took like a really long time to make work correctly. Because there's a ton of technical stuff, like for example, the scene where the Beetlejuice puppet comes out and they got the hands and the
Right.
giant head. You've obviously got the giant snake thing that pops up occasionally, which is
Yeah.
really cool. There's a ton of technical elements, and I'm just wondering which one of those would you say is the most hardest to set up?
Great question. There's quite a few that are contenders for the hardest, I would say. Um, because it's not if we're talking simply on the making it look good, then, you know, I could talk about that, but there's also the thing of also the implementation of it, right? Because
Yeah,
then you
sure.
also have the performers having to practice and train on how to use these props properly,
Gotcha.
or these assets properly. Most of the assets in the show that you saw were made by, obviously all of them were made in house, the custom ones at least, but most of them were made by our local, our regional. I'm trying to find a funny word for it, but our prop master Applewood, who made like the umbrellas. He made the handbook. He made the thing you saw during the Mayo scene. That big hand in the head, the head in the hands. Um, all like while we had some bits and bobs done by other people, he was the main asset creator in the show. But you also had like Kella Memphar making the sandworm, right? Um, as well as the animations that came with it, right? So there was a lot of people that made a lot of different things for the assets. Um, I think if I had to really pin it down to something that was the hardest to make, most likely that would be either Sandy the Sandworm herself, right? Because that includes the animations and the cues for those animations. Um, or um, actually, I would probably put either that or the spotlight system, because the spotlight and set change system was entirely built from the ground up by DeBright HD, actually, another one of our um, people in our tech crew, right? Um, he complete that system, that mod did not exist before DeBright made it, and so he literally was like, I gave him a vision. I'm like, hey, this is what I want. This is what I want to see. And then he was like, okay, give me some time. And then he made it. And I still can't believe that he pulled it off the way that he did. Um, because it went beyond anything that I thought it was possible in Minecraft.
Yeah, those
But
spotlights are
yeah,
incredible, to be honest. They're
yeah,
so well done. And another like thing in the vein of spotlights was doing the Girl Scout song with
hmm,
the flashlight when the houses
yes, the
start.
flashlight,
That detail is so I saw so many people in chat just pointing out how well done it is. I mean, because you
hmm,
have the light on the floor, then you have a light in front of her, you still have a spotlight on her too. If
right,
that some of those, like, spotlight effects are so well done, and
yeah,
I'm just such a big fan of them. And
yeah.
it's
No,
seeing a new space for lighting as well, because Spoo's lighting does this, but not to that level. So, it's impressive. I'm
it's
very proud of
yeah.
how it looks, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, and I still keep in mind, I definitely still have a huge like love for the way that um of how like Spood did it in their show,
Yeah,
right? With
sure.
Hamilton. It was so like I love the lighting in that, like the lighting design in there.
Yeah, I
Um
do love that too. I
and
mean,
yeah.
each of these musicals, the thing that I've noticed is they all have their own kind of visions for how they want their show to be, how they want things to work, and that's kind of
Yes,
it's you see
absolutely.
that in actual Broadway too. Most shows, they have different lighting, they have different things, and that's I think
Hmm.
that's how the Minecraft, Broadway space is really gonna evolve. I
Yeah.
think there was a
No,
day where
I
you
yeah.
see things once there's more than, like, 5 shows, there's gonna
Yeah.
be, like, a system that everybody uses, like, mods that everybody uses, and
Yeah.
it's gonna become easier than ever for someone to make their own, but that's getting into something I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk about later. But
Yeah. Yeah.
let's
Cool,
talk
cool, cool.
about,
But yeah.
the fundraising. This was all a big fundraising event to some extent for the Broadway League Foundation,
Hmm.
which is amazing foundation, and
Yep.
all of the revenue that was made from the Twitch stream, from ads, and there were a few people who came in and gifted subs. One of them Spood, actually, I saw that. Spood came and gifted a sub of 2. But there were people who gave during that, and all of that went back to the Broadway League Foundation. Do you know the number of how much you ended up raising from, the event in total? Do you have that number, perhaps?
Off the top of my head, unfortunately, no, just
Rough
because it
estimate,
was a
perhaps?
yeah, I could give you a rough estimate, but just for clarification, like the reason I can't is because it was a direct link to the Broadway League Foundation,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And since we weren't an official like partner to the Broadway League Foundation. We don't have access to those numbers. I can only tell you based off the people that told me they donated and they showed me how much they donated, right? Um, but I can at least tell you we made over 100. We raised over $100 for the Broadway League
Yeah, that's
Foundation.
great. 'Cause
So
truly, all numbers go to helping that out and helping with the foundation. But I was just
100%, yeah.
interested on why if there was a personal connection or a reason why you particularly wanted to go down the charity route of this, 'cause there is a world where if you wanted to, I think you could sell tickets for this and people would have bought it, and you could
Yeah,
have made money, but you decided to not do that and go down a nicer route, which I personally loved you doing, and decided to give all the money to charity. So I'm just
yeah,
wondering what made you choose that decision and why you pick this charity specifically?
yeah. Um, it really the first part of it stems from like, just my personal values as a creator. Um, one big part, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, I totally only did it because I believe, charity's cool. It's also because there is some things pertaining to the server that we use that there's some also complications regarding like monetization in that sense, and them disallowing monetization due to certain things. I can't give exact details, but basically, we wouldn't have been able to sell tickets to the show, for example. That's like one thing that we wouldn't have been able to do, or like make any like self profit off of it, right? But regardless, we still could have found like a workaround in like finding a different server host and stuff like that, right? Which is where it kind of goes into like my values as a creator. But I didn't want to sit here and just be like, oh, it's only because, right? Um, but a big part for me is that I have never seen content creation really as a primary form of income. Not that I don't want it to be, or not that I'm not committed it to be, but it's my main priority is to make a positive effect, or like to have a positive effect on the rest of the world with what I do and what I create and what I put out there, right? So this is something that has been prevalent with a lot of stuff that I've done. Um, I um, while my streams are monetized, stuff that is not just pertaining to me, a lot of it has been either for a fundraiser or for raising awareness for something else. Like for example, I did a 12-hour long Elden Ring speed run for my girlfriend Raven's cat, who was we were raising money for cancer treatment for. That's like one example, right? But for in this specific case, right, with BugPunch, getting back on track. The specific case of BugPunch being like raising money for something for a good cause. It's quite honestly the fact that I also wanted to just raise awareness to theater as a whole, within the content, like the platform that I'm in, the medium that I'm in, which is like Twitch and YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that, right? You don't really see theater talked about that much in those platforms, or talked at least not past like a casual level, right? And even if it is talked about, you don't really hear it talked about as an art, or as a like, as in the way that it exists in the world, right? In the sense of like, um you hear stuff of like, oh, I really liked Phantom of the Opera versus Phantom of the Opera is a really transformative thing, and this is how it made me feel, and this is why I like theater, and theater is really cool because of this, and there should really be more opportunities at blah 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 blah. You get what I'm saying with that, right? Where like, um, I wanted to, I really wanted to spark more conversation regarding the art form, because if like I've loved theater for a very long time, but just recently I made a very scary decision to jump fully into theater as a career, right? Um and so it's also at the end of the day just a way for little old me to kind of show in good faith that Bug Punch is a love letter to theater. um, as an art form. That it is something that can never be replaced, or one, it's like a snowflake. Every show is different, which is one really cool thing about it. But the other thing is that it is something that can never be artificially recreated in the same way that it exists, like made by man, right? Made by humans. I'm not gonna say made by man. I'm gonna say made by humankind, right? Made by people. Um, I hope that makes sense. I know I went a
Yeah,
little
that's
abstract with it,
actually really
but
inspiring.
yeah, thank you. I'm glad. I I appreciate that.
Yeah, but thinking about the, like, Broadway, um, in Minecraft as a whole, do you think we can potentially see a world in the future in Minecraft where people are making their own Broadway shows inside of Minecraft instead of making adaptations? Do you think there's a world where maybe people make Broadway shows, they write their own music and all of this, and they actually sell tickets to shows that they have made themselves into Broadway? Do you think that's a potential thing that could happen in the future based on, your I don't wanna say expert opinion, but I feel like you're
Yeah.
qualified as an expert in Minecraft
Honestly, I'd say
boat
absolutely.
category. So just
Yeah.
wondering what you think, if that can be something that happens in the future.
Right. I would say absolutely. I would hope so. I think the first step is bringing Broadway to Minecraft, and then I think the next step after that is bringing Minecraft to Broadway.
Yeah.
Um, because this, even though it is our own, touch on Bug Punch, it is still something that pre-existed, right? We still had material to work off of, and cannot wait for the day that someone sits down and is like, you know what, I'm gonna make my own fresh idea, and then we start just getting Broadway in Minecraft. You know what I mean? I think that's something that's entirely feasible. If we could do this, then I think anything is possible, quite honestly,
Yeah,
within
for sure.
within the realm of Minecraft theater. Um, because like I said before, that like I didn't say this. I thought it, but I didn't say it. But theater's timeless in the sense of that, like, um, it's not theater is not the way in which it's performed, it's the art form itself, right? And so as long as the art form exists, right, all you need for theater to be theater is one performer and one person to watch it, ultimately, right? And
Yeah.
so what that means is that literally sky is the limit with what we want to do with Minecraft theater. And so um I'm really hoping that people get creative with what, after what they've seen, and get inspired by it and start making their own stuff. This definitely, the goal of this was not for it to be like a, oh, look at me guys, I'm the best at making Minecraft musical. No. It's lonely at the top, as they say. I want it to be a thing to encourage other people to join in on the fun, really, to cannonball into the pool, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but
Make their own
leaning
stuff.
into that, the next person to probably make you were talking about, "Oh, yeah, I hope that somebody makes their own thing inside of Minecraft, their own theater show." The next
Yeah.
person to make that is probably watching this video right now, because the people who
True.
enjoy this is a very small audience. So you have a
Hmm.
unique opportunity to speak to that group of audience who are interested in making Minecraft theater shows. So if you had any advice for them of making a Minecraft musical or Minecraft Broadway show inside of Minecraft, what would you say to them? What would you say?
Oh man, no pressure, right?
No pressure.
First off, hi. Um, Second off, I would say, if we're talking purely on creating your own original material, right? I think the first thing
Original
is
or,
to,
like, copying as
or
well?
just anything.
Just
Yeah.
anything, yeah.
I think I think the first thing I would say is it all starts with, you don't need to, because I will tell you right now, when I started with Bug Punch, I did not start with the dream team I have today, right? I did not start with the resources that I have today. I started with an idea, and I started with a passion to make that idea, or like that, the determination or the dream to make that idea a reality, right? And so honestly, I would say the first two things that you need to make what you want happen is that it has to come from you, right? You and yourself. Because if you don't have you, then you don't have a show. It needs to start with the dream and then the willpower to push that dream to be what you want it to be, right? I sound like a motivational speaker right now, I'm sure, but like in the sense of like it can't just be with something like this, with especially the caliber in which BugPunch is, it would not have been possible if I did not have the willpower to see it through. Because there were so many points in which I feel like in any other project, I would have looked at it and been like, we had a good run, folks. We had a good run, gang. Or like, we gave it our all. Sometimes things just don't work the way they did. But no, with theater especially, there's this like extra level you got to take it, where it's like it's not a question of if, it's a question of how, right? And if the how isn't possible, then it's not a question of okay, then I guess we're not doing that. It's no, if we can't do it that way, how do we do it instead? Right? It's never a like with improv. I said this with my crew as I was, in rehearsals, as I was, workshopping with them and doing training sessions with them. With improv, there's this thing of yes and, right? There's this thing of like always building off of what's already there instead of shutting off, being like no, right? I feel like that is also really applicable to what we're talking about here with like instead of seeing it as a here's my obstacle, I'm screwed, or like oh no, you really got to challenge yourself to see it less as a blockade and more as an opportunity to do things different, because different does not always mean bad. And I really had to. That's definitely something I learned in the creative process. That different does not mean bad; it just means different. And sometimes different is better than what you already had in your head. Right? What matters all above all is that you push through. Is that you see it to the end. Because that and maybe this will really touch someone, being transparent about this, like even like a week, the last week coming into show day, there were so many points where I was just like stressed out of my mind. Like we're really talking like um some of the most mind-boggling levels of like panic that I've ever felt like regarding a creative project, right? And, I would ask myself questions even throughout the project like, how is this possible? How are we going to do this? How is this going to happen? How is this? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Right? And then we did the show. And then the show was done. And then we got to see the fruits of our labor. And every single moment, right, that I was stressed or worried or scared or like concerned or had doubts, right, or got even angry, right, all of those memories flashed like past my memories, like boom, 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 all in like one big time lapse, right, in one moment. And then just like a snap, it was gone. In that one moment, all I could remember is we did this. We went through so much and we still did this together. All of those negative emotions, all of those worries, or all of those like concerns we may have had, right, from the stress that really make you like high strung, right, which are natural. It like all of it went from feeling like, oh my gosh, I hope this was worth it, to oh my gosh, this was worth it. This was the best thing I've ever been a part of, right? And so with that, I guess the biggest thing I would say is don't, and I know it's like cheesy being like, don't let your fear stop you from doing what you want to do, but it really boils down to just if you want to do it. But don't let your worries limit you from what you want to do. Because ultimately, There is always a way. It may not be in the way that you want it to be. Lord knows that happened with my project, with BugPunch here. But if you have the willpower to see it through, it will be great. And it will be something that you can be proud of as long as it's something that you are willing to push for. Stay true to that. And be proud of the fact that you're even trying to do that. I think that's what I would leave folks with.
Just casually, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
that was
casually. Yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents.
that was beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, Now leading on to my final little question for you, my last kind of thing that I'm gonna talk about is we touched
Okay.
on this a little bit earlier, but I've obviously gone through your entire Twitter. I got a tweet here that I'm gonna read,
Mhm.
and I know you're not I don't think you can respond much to this personally, but we'll see.
Okay. Okay.
Just fleshed out a really cool idea that I want to release in a year and a half or so. Bug Punch is just the start. Freezing Point and Secret Project can be so cool. You have
Mhm.
future plans for something. I'm not saying it's a musical, but is it a musical? Are
I
you considering it?
cannot here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that I said dibs on Heather during the end of Bug Punch for a reason, because I have every intention to make Heathers a reality in Minecraft.
Ooh,
So,
wow.
that will happen. That will happen. Can't tell you when. Can't tell you in what capacity, right? But it will happen.
What a
I
teaser.
think it's natural to expect me to take a nice break
Yeah, I would
before
do the same.
tackling that. But it is something that I really want to do. So I think you can expect that to happen, eventually. And when
Wow,
it does, it'll be great.
that's a pretty big teaser there.
Yeah. Well, I did say dibs on Heathers.
Yeah, but this is
So
a confirmation that we got a confirmation that something is coming. I
yeah,
think
it's
people are
just
gonna really enjoy that.
yeah, like I said, I can't tell you like who's gonna be a part of it. I can't tell you when it's gonna happen, but I can tell you I want to do it. So
Yeah,
um
for sure.
yeah.
All right. Well,
Um
it's been great having you.
yeah,
I've enjoyed this very
absolutely.
much. I've been great hearing what you've had to say about Bug Punch and just a ton of stuff about Minecraft Musical Theater.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're gonna end it off here. And
Okay.
if you want to check
Sounds
out
great.
Bug Punch in the description, you can go check it out. There's a link to the Twitch VOD right now. I'd strongly encourage you go watch it. It is truly a masterpiece. Go watch it. Like go watch it. But
100%.
hopefully soon there'll be more links down there. But go check it out. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next episode. And this has been Crafting Connections with Swiftu. Goodbye.